Web3 family for putting this event together. Today I'll be talking about privacy in Web3, and I think it's especially important after the Tornado Cash sanctions, but in general, we've had this sort of movement of our civil liberties being eroded away, so I think it's very important for us to talk about this, especially in Web3 where everything's more transparent. Okay. That's it, thanks guys. Alright, so first a little bit about me. My name is Daniel Lumi. I'm a Web3 researcher and consultant. I specialize in L2, ZK, privacy, and DAOs. We try switching started. So today we'll be talking about why should you care about privacy, especially in Web3. How do we improve privacy protocols to prevent hackers and malicious users? And then in general, what steps can you take to protect your privacy in Web3? So why privacy? This is the sort of most common statement that I hear when it comes to privacy. I've always been a privacy nut. But if I didn't do anything wrong, why should I care, right? And honestly, I think Edward Snowden said this well, which is, if you argue that you don't care about privacy because you're not trying to hide anything, it's like saying that you don't care about free speech because you don't have anything important to say, right? And here's some examples of why privacy should matter, especially in Web3. So let's say you get paid in crypto, and maybe you don't want your boss to see every single transaction you always make. Maybe you spend $300,000 on a silly JPEG. That might not show you have the best judgment, right? Or maybe you buy porno. That's not something your boss should necessarily know. Or let's say you buy something silly, like Solana. Sorry, AskRocket69. Maybe you don't want people to know that this is how you make your fortune. That's maybe not the best judgment call either. Or maybe you want to donate to a polarizing political cause or just activist group. And an example of this is during the Ukraine war, I donated to Ukraine, right? I don't know if I can ever visit Russia again because it's linked directly to my account. I don't think Putin would be very happy me stepping foot there knowing that I actually gave to their enemy, right? Or you donate to Edward Snowden or feminism or whatever cause ends up being. If you're being abused or harassed or targeted for hacking, this is especially bad because they see your entire transaction history. They know what hotel you're staying at. They know what your address is based on your stores that you're going to. They know everything you do, right? Or let's just say you use one service one time. You post one picture on Facebook. You go to the gas station one time, or you go into a hotel or a hostel. Should they see your entire transaction history just by you using them once? That's how crypto works right now. And just in general, like, would you be willing to give your bank statement and your tax returns to every single person that you know, or just a random person on the streets, or a homeless person? It's public, crypto's public, so anyone can see your transaction history. The second they know your wallet address, they know everything about you. And the point of this is when, and hopefully, when crypto achieves mainstream, an important note on this is even during the frothiest parts of the bull market, that wasn't mainstream. We're a tiny part of the adaptation that we will have in the future. And in the future, your banks, massive companies, Amazon, retailers, social media, banks, they will all use AI to gather every single piece of every person's financial history. That's not a future that we should want to go to. So how do we improve privacy protocols without actually helping criminals or hackers? And this is a fair question that I get quite a bit, which is, if we make money private, are we just helping hackers and criminals? Don't do hacking. Like, genuinely, I care about my privacy. I think it's a civil liberty, but I really don't want to help terrorist organizations or drug cartels launder money or someone hacking a protocol to be able to launder it. The sort of philosophical argument that I would make behind this, though, on the side is throughout human history, literally, if you believe in evolution, 200 million years, we didn't have public money, we had private money. People didn't see where you spent it every time you spent it. They only saw it when you paid someone, right? And even then it'd be limited. And my sort of general argument is that if we make money private again, we're just going back to the paradigm that we were always in until around 60 years ago with Nixon, right? It was in 1920 something when the government started collecting financial information about every single individual and their day-to-day transactions. Things like tax returns too are fairly new. And there's many services that we use in our day-to-day life that need to be regulated. For example, the internet. But the internet relies on privacy. It allows you to have a bank account that maybe your neighbors can't crawl through, or it allows you to have an Amazon account without your neighbors seeing whatever sex toy you bought today, right? Or Google. There's other ways that we can regulate crypto that doesn't mean it's on a protocol level, right? Like HTTPS, when you connect to a website, you use HTTPS, it literally hides the packets that you're sending. We can't regulate an internet service provider to block malicious content. We can't stop people from listing stolen goods or guns on eBay. But what we can do is we can regulate the front end. So we can force eBay to remove those stolen goods or guns. We can regulate Google to remove copyright content. So I think it should be done on a front end level rather than on a protocol level. And here's some examples of how to improve privacy protocols while still preventing criminals and hackers. And this is front-end limitations rather than the underlying level. So one of them is called, it's actually a ZK proof called proof of membership, right? The idea is every single time a person deposits money, let's say into Tornado Cash, they have to generate a proof showing that they're not on a sanctions list or that they aren't a known hacker, right? And the nice thing about privacy protocols is the longer you leave your money there, the more private it is, right? So then we can also force this on the withdrawal step. And this gives some time for those lists to be updated in case now maybe they don't figure out you're a hacker in 5 seconds, maybe they figure that out in 2 days, that's enough, right? And in fact, Tornado Cash is a good example of this. No, not Tornado Cash, sorry, Axie Infinity. There's 600 million that was hacked from the bridge, and the only reason why we know exactly where it went was because he left it there for 1 day and then withdrew it, right? Within 1 day, we already knew those addresses, and we knew that there weren't that many people depositing money into privacy protocols, so we know exactly where it went. This gets a little bit hairy though, because it depends on whose sanctions list you listen to. Like, if Germany sanctions someone, should you listen to that? If North Korea sanctions someone, should you listen to that? If the US does it single-handedly, do you listen to that? It's not perfect, but again, this keeps some level of control and blocking some level of criminals from using it. Another idea is the opposite of that, proof of exclusion of membership. So for example, your government can have a list of individuals that it believes are legal citizens. Again, you do this on deposit, on withdrawal. So if you did hack someone, your government can update the list. Oops. Yeah, please. Thank you. And then we have this concept in some protocols, like Tornado actually has this, or Aztec ZK Money has this, which is called a viewing key. And a viewing key essentially, you can provide, let's say you're being sanctioned, you can give the government your viewing key, audited, sorry, not sanctioned. You can give them your viewing key and they can see all of your transaction history to make sure that you pay taxes, but no one else can. And this kind of goes back into a paradigm that we always had in humanity, which is voluntary disclosure, right? You don't have to show every single text message to the government. You don't have to show every single transaction on your bank. But if you get audited, you do, right? If you don't show it to them, you'll probably go to jail. So it's something called voluntary disclosure. This is actually a legal concept that is still existing today, except for Web3. And also Web3. Another thing that you can do, like Axie Infinity hack, is you can have either a per account, IP address, or on the global protocol, deposit limits, right? So let's say you prevent more than 50 ETH being deposited into a privacy protocol in one day. That makes it extremely hard for someone to launder money from Axie Infinity if it's 50,000 a day rather than 600 million, right? Or you can do it on a per account basis instead of a total level. There's another legal concept that we actually do have to follow called the travel rule. And for a long time, this kind of stayed away from crypto. They didn't force it on crypto, but they're starting to. Which is if you do, for example, over 10,000 in the US or 3,000 in one transaction or in one day, you have to disclose who that person was, right? Banks do this. You might not notice it, but every time you transfer more than that, they're actually generating a report. You could have a privacy protocol where essentially if an individual did a transaction less than 10,000, that transaction stays private, right, encrypted. If there's a whale putting over 10K, then it becomes public like any transaction is public on a blockchain today. And this would mean it would take about 100 days to launder $1 million. It's a long time. They have patience, hackers though, but then you can implement some of these other parts like deposit limits or sanctions lists, proof of membership to make sure that you have at least 100 days to block them from doing more than 1 million. These are completely random examples of how privacy might actually help in crypto. These are less about improving privacy protocols, more about just improving blockchains, right? So you might have heard of this concept of censorship in blockchains, or especially Ethereum is a big thing now. Or MEV, when you make a swap, someone's actually stealing a little bit of money from you, you just don't notice it. We can eliminate that entirely. Like, there's this big talk of how do we do this, we actually know exactly how. It's called a shutterized beacon chain, right? The idea is that you can encrypt the transaction, include it on a blockchain, and then use something called the threshold committee to reveal it one block later. And at that point, it's too late to MEV do it, right? This is an easy problem to solve. It has some technical challenges, but we can eliminate all MEV and censorship today. In a week, couple weeks. Another idea is private blockchains, and Vitalik's been talking about something called stealth addresses for ERC-721s, which are NFTs. So if you decide to put your NFT as your profile picture on Twitter, it doesn't show all of your funds. Right now, maybe you made the mistake of buying that crypto punk on your address with 1 million plus. That might not be information you want to give away just to show an NFT as a profile picture. So how do you actually protect your privacy on blockchains today? Again, they are all public right now, right? One idea, one way you can actually do this maybe, you just send it to exchange, right? Then you send it back out. That's a big maybe though. Most exchanges use the same address for both withdraw and deposit, right? So you send them 1 ETH, you send it back out, it's the same address. That's very obvious, we know where your money went. Some of them shuffle addresses. For example, Coinbase. When you send it to Coinbase, Coinbase Pro to be specific, Coinbase no. They change they send it from a different address, right? Your trust assumption at that point is that you trust the exchange. And if they go through bankruptcy, that they won't reveal that. But for most of us, it gives enough protection, at least from our friends or the one person we send money to. Not super recommendable, but it works. Another idea or another concept we have today is called a privacy protocol. And this can be either a layer 1 like secret network, or it can be a layer 2 like Aticco, right? And there are many ways to make a privacy protocol, such as Intel FTX, fully homomorphic encryption, some multi-party computations. But at the moment, ZK is the best way to do this, right? Maybe fully homomorphic encryption in the future. Right now, ZK. One important thing, since I'm talking about ZK, ZK does not mean zero knowledge. It does, but it does not mean your transactions are private. There's ways to use ZK that it's private, but something like ZK Sync or Polygon Hermes or these different ZK roles are not private. And that's important to know. It doesn't always mean privacy. And the thing that you need to understand in privacy protocols is to be able to track where someone sent their money. It's all a game of mathematical possibilities, right? So, and again, the example of this is the Axie Infinity hack. Someone sends 600 million in there, someone else sends out 600 million the day later. Like, it's pretty obvious most people didn't have 600 million there, so it was that guy, right? So the one of these ways that you protect your privacy is called the anonymity set or privacy set. And the idea is that the smaller amounts that you send in there, good. Larger amounts, bad. 600 million, bad, right? If you send 1 ETH, lots of people have 1 ETH in this protocol. It's less obvious it's you, right? Don't send very specific amounts, right? Like 0.002375. It's so easy to figure out who exactly deposited that much and then withdrew that much. Very few people are going to use that, right? Again, it's just about mathematical probability. Deposit time is important. The longer you keep your money in the privacy protocol, the more private it becomes, right? Again, if that Axie Infinity hacker had left it there for 3 years, there's eventually going to be many times more than 600 million that come through, and as long as they're not an idiot and send out 600 million at once, it's easier to hide in the group in a way. Some of the privacy protocols, like Aztec, actually allow you to do trading within the protocol. So let's say you deposit 1 ETH and you swap it to DAI, you swap it to something else, you swap it to something else. Now it's not so obvious that it was you that sent that money and now is withdrawing 10 DAI, right? It just shuffles around, it increases the anonymity set of the protocol. So I am ETH based, so as a layer 2, if you have some assets on ETH, you want a new wallet that's private, let's say you went to a conference and you paid something with your wallet, don't do that, everyone knows your address after that. You can deposit money into Aztec and obfuscate it a little, start a new wallet, right? Oh.
Yeah.
I was talking about ZK today. It's a complex topic. I have a full 35-minute speech on ZK that goes into more about ZK. I'm one of those geeks that has been in zero-knowledge proofs for many years. It used to be a very, very small set of us. It's grown a lot bigger in the last year with the ZK EVM meme. It is extremely complex math, and most of the time when you ask people to explain it, they go into like polynomial commitments or quotient-based checks or Fry-based recursion. This is a mathless version of explaining it. People tend to, mathematicians aren't great at explaining math, so that's one way you can learn about it. And if you care about privacy, please give to crypto advocacy. Give to Electronic Freedom Frontier, Coin Center, Blockchain Association. They're all working really, really hard to protect our privacy, right? Maybe you yelling standing in front of a group yelling about privacy is not going to change the world, but these guys actually have enough money and funding and time to try to change some of these laws to protect our civil liberties. Thanks for caring about privacy. On behalf of literally everyone in the world, we've had an erosion of privacy. These days, your data is like oil in this world. Most companies are worth billions because of data, and people don't really realize what's happening, so we've been gradually slipping down this extremely dangerous hill of losing this civil liberty, and we need to actively try. Again, do you mind changing over with that? My name is Daniel Lumi. I'm ZK Lumi on Twitter. Give me a follow. You can also find the ZK speeches and some other stuff coming there. That's it. Thank you. And we will be having now like a roundtable discussion. So everyone everyone scoot your chairs around, form a giant circle, pretend like you like each other, and
scenario set for the crypto landscape and the privacy landscape and just the status quo at this current time.
yeah, it's not great. It sets a legal precedent, right? It makes it easy to ban any other of these protocols. That's why, in an ideal world, we'd have a privacy tool that would be private for everyone. In a real world, and I don't want to help hackers, in a more realistic world, if we don't have these controls, they will block every single privacy protocol and we'll move into dystopia where not just our internet activity, but our financial activity will be public. And anyone that you pay once to learns everything about you. So that's why I've talked to Aztec team, I've talked to actually Secret Networks, another great team. Different teams about implementing some protocol level changes, not just because I want to stop hackers, but also just so we can stay above the water and give an impression of us trying, right? Google also has nuclear bomb schematics, then they remove them, right? This is the reality of the situation, so we need to do as much as possible to live in this trust-based model.
But there was nothing formal, right? The government didn't come out and say XYZ, okay, you guys are out, right? It was just, it's all just in the dark, okay, you guys are out, right? Okay, so it's just shadow working. Okay, cool.
And he was contributing as well.
He was contributing to a protocol, he wasn't, I don't know if he used it or not, and stuff. But on another point, it's, even nowadays, then, how many of your transactions are by, bank card, let's say? Mine is 90 probably, even more, so you're already giving a lot of your information, plus it's CBDC, so it's gonna be even more complex, so it's, yeah.
Right now, it's just your bank, though.
Yeah.
It's not literally every single company you ever do business with.
Yeah, but
That's the problem. It's we already live in dystopia in many ways.
Yeah. The government wants to get access, it basically gets, all of your access, all of your messages, everything,
And that's the nice thing about these privacy protocols, is then you don't even have to trust your bank. You trust your government, which we come from a place of privilege to say that we want to trust our government. But it's the things we have to do to prevent money laundering and other things. And again, it doesn't just have to be questions. I want to give this mic off, have people talk about it in general, experiences, whatever ends up being.
All right. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Kyle.
Yeah. Your talk was really good. I like all the examples about the different ways it could be used. I'm wondering if you could talk more about the Shutter beacon chain, and is there a way to do that indefinitely?
Yes.
Yes.
We already have the schematics. So, there needs to be some engineering effort for especially the. Okay, now I'm getting into details, but the fee limit. But honestly, if a team of engineers wanted to try it, it would take them a couple of months to eliminate all ambiguous censorship.
But could they make the chain completely private, or is this a different issue?
This wouldn't be completely private. It would just stop you from being essentially the first block you would make the transaction. It would be a private transaction, and then the next block it would become public. Right? It just stops you from being censored, and it stops you from being front run for MEV. And if you get stopped for front running, you can't do sandwiching, which are considered extremely harmful forms of stealing money from people.
And what's the reason for turning it back into public?
Most of Ethereum applications would break immediately if they didn't make a cut. Like AMMs, for example, like DEXs. Fundamentally don't work with privacy unless you do some fancy tricks to increase non-anonymity sets or something.
Awesome, thank you.
But we can do it on L2s, that's my hope, or L3s. So we get privacy back on the.
I will drop several directions for discussion, so it won't be kind of like a bit limiting. First, I told you that you start from if I didn't done anything wrong, why should I be private? And now you're talking about money laundering, which is kind of a contrast or kind of like criminalization of privacy. I'm doing research on privacy now, and I see that basically we are in a strange situation when crypto started from decentralization ethos, and now we are kind of trying to be compliant to decentralization, which is funny philosophical concept of losing our I don't know how to say is our roots and basically our ancestral developers. And then the big question is like what decentralization mean and decentralization from what? And the challenge here is that normies, the new people who are coming into, for example, NFTs or DAOs or whatever fancy marketing tool there is in the market, they don't know about decentralization, they don't understand it, and what NFT guys or like OpenSea are selling them, like, hey, make shitloads of money here and be super transparent, because then you could show to the others, let's call them creators, that hey, I can make lots of money here. And they don't promote decentralization in terms of the privacy, because they play this game, transparency is great for everyone. And you said, I mean, you clearly showed that no, and if I'm transparent in Iran, I could be dead. That's first big thing, decentralization. Second interesting fact that I've seen that basically there are also companies who are presenting new business model for the market, like selling your data. And they package it in the Web3 like kind of like, okay, if you sell your data to Google right now, they make money out of you, you don't have nothing. So sell your data with profit. Or there are services like decentralized cookie, which is like pure evil because cookies are a surveillance mechanism, but they're saying that here's a fancy new model, you will make money from being advertised to, which is also an interesting philosophical phenomenon, like when we disrupt business model, should we keep and you see it as GDPR consent? Because basically lots of people, even when they see the information about consent, would you like to provide your data? They say, yeah, of course. And that's direct link with the privacy. And here's one, again, big topic is surveillance capitalism, which not many privacy projects are talking about. When basically, if you shut down Google or Meta or other sources from getting access to your data, they would be forced to change business model, like premium subscriptions on YouTube, because they cannot sell your privacy, they cannot access to your data. And that maybe the last fun bit, anarchist, but in a fun way, you said privilege, and that's super right. Because the crypto now is pro-America, pro-states, but if I...
Pro-West.
Huh?
Pro-West.
Yeah, pro-West, and basically propelled by VCs who are registered in the States, and of course they will be super compliant, they will support just compliant projects, and in this sense, if I'm from a different anti-state mindset, from the different geography, how this compliant would work for me. And for many geographies, it doesn't work, and this love in state, default law in state, is a bit compromised phenomena. And there's a nice book about people's history of America from Howard Zinn about the atrocities that America did in the past. It's kind of like if you're even academic, you don't need to love your state. Then it kind of, especially if you're a minority. And then their interesting trend is privacy. Also, not many people are talking about the parallel society status is doing their own network state by applying their different bunch of technologies from communication to decentralized storage. And there are guys who are trying to create these parallel economies, which are a reflection of the early state of crypto. Like why it appeared, what was this initial idea, and let's get back to the roots.
So I actually don't want to open it up because speaking of privacy and then speaking of trusting our government are paradoxical, right? To some degree, fundamentally. And I'm curious, like hands up, how many of you guys think that we should have a completely private system where you can't track any money and anyone can use it?
I'm only answering that with CK.
To some degree. Because if we institute the things that I recommended, then no.
Part why I like this actually is because
You have transparency and like for example with FTX or Lomina, like you have so many like independent methods for like analyzing everything and it's super interesting for me, you know. I do think so like I think so what like my opinion like privacy should come on offboarding on and off ramp basically, you know. So because in the internet you can't easily find illegal stuff as well, but you can go and surf it and watch it whatever you know you want, but you kind of like pay for it because it definitely will highlight to like buy something to make it more. You know, yeah. So things on ramp and off ramp. But you know, like, full privacy, like yeah, it's like you should have full privacy. That's why it's there's this way, right? You cannot follow the trail basically.
I'm curious,
So I raised my hand and I was like pro full privacy. But I want to say here maybe we just need the option to have it. Because at some point you're maybe not, let's assume you get the moment ruled by the good guys. Let's say this can change anytime. And if they control our money, we basically have one problem. Because the money is the biggest load we have. So if you want to make sure that we get ruled by the good guys, maybe it's not a bad idea to have at least, let's say, a totally private option to fund, for example, parties that are the good guys if the bad guys try to take over. And, I just want to leave this here and maybe pass it to someone.
does anyone think we shouldn't have completely private money? Or like with some limitations? I want to hear the counterpoint. Everyone wants private money.
I mean, at some point, I think you should have a possibility to disclose some transactions. Like, for example, you're talking about like good guy, bad guys, but if there is a bad guy that does something wrong, you need to be able to audit it. You need to be able to see that this person has done something wrong. Otherwise, everything's going to be hidden, and you're never going to be able to see anything. And so I agree that you should have a form of privacy, and as you say, voluntary disclosure would be the right thing to do. Otherwise, then voluntary depends on if, like, for example, I don't know, something like FTX happens. If you can check what happened, then you can prove that they did something wrong, and then they're going to get out with the money, basically. So at some point, I guess that you need to have a possibility to check the values, the transaction, but by default, it should be private.
Maybe or something, I agree with you. Maybe in like the total monetary system, it's not a bad idea. We need this, but I think there's one interesting way of thinking that we need to have it, because if you say bad people can use it, what is your assumption of if you have 1,000 people, how many bad people are there? Maybe one. So should the other 999 risk losing their democracy or their, let's say, to own their money? But I still get your point. It's hard.
I agree. It's like you shouldn't punish like the good people because there are some bad people. But that's today the default way it happens. And if you find another way, then that would be the perfect way.
Let's hope so.
Lumi, I'll ask you a question to Sally. So what do you think, talking about other solutions, what do you see right now in the immediate future that they could develop from a privacy point of view, using ZK tag or all these other technologies, that you think, besides, for example, layer 2s to kind of like obfuscate or shield the money that you have, or you're transacting with your friend or somebody, what other kind of applications do you see that could really help find a new way on how we manage data, how we manage other people's privacy, etc.?
Like general cases?
Yeah, like for example, NIM, the VPN kind of mixnet, all these kind of applications. Do you see some that you're really interested in?
So there's lots, honestly. It's a new field in lab too, so there will continue being a lot of other use cases that it's hard to imagine right now. Examples of this. For example, right now when you log into a website, right? What you're essentially doing is you're sending your password, at first encrypted, onto a server somewhere. Then it's in plain text, and they say probably a hash, but sometimes in plain text your password into their centralized database, right? What that means is if there's a hacker on that server, they see your password, right? And the majority of people don't use different passwords for every website, right? It's kind of a pain in the ass, right? So if they hack into one website, one of the thousands of things that we sign up for, Uber, whatever it ends up being, they just got your password in and log in, and they can log into everything you have after that, maybe even steal your identity, right? You can use zero-knowledge proofs for essentially proving on your device that you know the email and the password, and then you send essentially a sole proof and the witness to the website, and they can prove that you know your password without them ever storing it on their database, right? So you can have passwords that can't be hacked if the website's hacked, for example. There are many other use cases for ZK, also not privacy, but within privacy as well, like organizing protests. You can, let's say you have a protest and you want to vote for, do we do something, right? You can vote for it without actually showing who voted for it using a membership, essentially. And then you see X amount of people provably voted for doing this action without saying, oh, it was Joe, let's go arrest Joe, right? Lots of other use cases outside of privacy as well for ZK.
I also I assembled a database of these privacy applications, and among them, one of the most interesting is the identity solution, and check UniRep protocol by privacy and scalability explorations. These guys, it's a bit slippery slope, because what they're saying that you need a reputation. And the problem with airdrops, scammers, is that you cannot, Vitalik was talking about this, you cannot track negative reputation or apply negative reputation to everyone, because sometimes people do change. We know that some really bad actors become good actors, commenting on that side. And then you need to have a certain flexible system of labeling without being policy. The guy from the co-founder of NIM is saying that we should eliminate labeling people by numbers, because it's a Holocaust type of, or what Chinese are doing with Uyghurs, labeling you with a number, and then you become a number, and then there are lots of surveillance mechanisms to track you within these numbers, again, cookie or IP. So, but at the same time, if you're anon and you're doing bad reputation for the whole system, is there a way to not track you in a way, or whatever you were saying with the sanctioned personas? And ZK badges are trying to tackle this, ZK Sysmo. Now it's more like a fun implementation for your DAO community NFT drop, like gated access to private content that you could build for your VIP personas, which is also fun. It's nice to have, nice introduction, simple to understand in the community. There will be a super easy, cool approach within the gaming industry. You could have access to this legendary sword without others knowing how much you paid for it. So but then it's interesting to check on Mirror articles about UniRep protocol, like how we should approach credentials. Should they be anonymous? And if anonymous, what would we do there to protect ourselves?
So you were saying about reputation. I want to give one more example of this. So Tornado Cash developers, you could commit onto GitHub code. So you could develop Tornado without anyone ever knowing that it's you, right? But then you have the credentials that you're allowed to make edits. And then maybe you'll go to Joe and 10 guys decide on that action, right? I want to go back to identity too. Like, let's say you're buying alcohol on Glovo, right? And let's say you have to prove that you're over 18. Right now, the way it works is you have to send them a picture of your passport or your ID. They store your 38, right? And then if they sell their company or if they want to make some extra money or they get hacked, we know this user is 32, it can be used for advertising to you, it can be used for stealing your identity, it can be used for a lot of things. Using ZK, you could just prove that you're over 18, right? Which is a lot less, like you could be 107 for all they know, and all of a sudden that's less useful information. Or you could show, instead of showing that you're from this country, you could show you're not from a sanctioned country to be able to sign up for Coinbase, right? Or you wouldn't have to do all of your ID documents for every single exchange, all your tax returns, everything. You just have it certified by your government or your bank, and then it's a thumbs up, and you can use all these services without having to send them everything.
So my question about this is like, I mean, it sounds awesome, right? Like this is what we want. We want to be able to prove that, you know, we're just that we're over 18 when we're buying off. We don't want them to see everything else. But then looking at it from the government's perspective, they do want to see that, right? They want all that information. So, but okay, but what about like the new people? But for the next generation, right? Like, how do we actually convince these companies and governments that to build in a way that where we share less data?
How do we create incentives for that?
Anyone? Yeah, I'm not great incentives. Maybe Facebook shouldn't be worth $8 billion, or Apple shouldn't be worth $2 trillion without just making products.
Just
Yeah.
let me wait just for a second. I'll give you my back. They don't regulate Meta, Facebook. They still expose, pay lots of fines for basically stealing your data, breaking the law, and now kind of like you're asking, what about this tech that protects us? So if governments doesn't basically protect you from legal entities, how that are big and enough to lobby their interest, there's no way they would go and say, yeah, like let's protect you. So first, maybe they should put too much pressure to the actors who already are basically making your life worse without maybe you even knowing it, and then there will be a certain level of certification, I think. But one point here, the problem of this ZK Magic is that it works well because there were no tests and basically no failures and no hacks and no compromises within the system. And even it's a centralized system still, and for 1 year it will be centralized fairly. So in this sense, I think this is solely a R&D thing. And there will be hacks, there will be problems, but it's kind of like the promises are there. But it's not a silver bullet.
I want to say on that, math is magic. The math is not lying. The math is not wrong. People might make mistakes for it. But that's with any cryptography, right? Any cryptography, we had a panel gathering for layer 2 security. Any cryptography gets proven over time. We don't know for a fact that RSA can't be hacked. Right? We don't know for a fact that elliptic curves are quantum resistant. Anything like ZK takes time to develop, to have it in real use. The nice thing in crypto is there's already billions secured by fraud proofs, and there will be many billions secured by ZK. So that's a very good incentive for a white hat hacker or a black hat to try to hack these systems, and we'll find out vulnerabilities over time. Yeah, it's a bit magic right now, but it's any new math.
Hey, I just wanted to go back on the discussion on why governments aren't using this tech. I'd like to be a bit optimistic and think that it's just that governments are slow and that not obviously all governments are bad or a static thing that's only with bad people all the time, obviously, right? But governments change, leaders change, and we can see some countries, I think, doing better than others already in their approach to digital transformation.
And well, yeah, I guess like maybe there will be some country where zero knowledge will be used, right? It won't happen overnight, but yeah, the way I can think about it is like probably the smallest the countries, the more likely it is to adopt any such like cutting edge technology, but it'll take time obviously because we barely use it ourselves, even though we are really deep into this industry. So we can't really, I mean, realistically, we can't really expect like a nation state to do it, you know, anytime soon.
It's power to the people too, right? Because in the beginning, the internet wasn't encrypted. In fact, encryption was illegal until what, 1993 or something, 1992. Period. Illegal. No one was allowed to use it except government spies. If we care about privacy, if we push companies to incentivization, if we push them to collect data differently, or for the cookies, like, as much as I get your point about people choosing to sell their data, there are more private ways you can do that, where you do on-device calculations and you don't send that information to Google, for example. Right? It's one step forward. The point of this is like, it's like so any socioeconomic change, right? The more we get hacked, the more our websites get hacked into, or which they are getting more and more because people suck with passwords and we're not good with internet security. These will become to some degree a necessity and hopefully something that we push for governments to do or companies to do.
No?
Look, I think it's the same point. Maybe from the other side, it's like, why do we actually need publicly available personal information? Let's say, where I go every day, what I buy every day. The whole point of loan demanding is being debated how effective it is. At some point, it's like we can live with not screening transactions, just letting terrorists and other bad actors funnel money through it, because it just becomes such an insignificant amount compared to the rest of the system. So what's the point of having publicly available personal information?
I mean, how I see it, I think the point here is like the more information you have on people, the more control you have, right? So that's how I look at it in terms of both governments and corporations. So if this was back to my point, you know, like why would they build in a way where it's fundamentally better for us because we get less information and the product still functions, but it's like they're losing control from that. That's how I see it. So I think it's going to be like, I think this is also going to be a battle in the courts, right? And lobbying and like any movements for this. I'm not sure how else we could actually get, you know, this integrated into society.
Funny enough, like I was like talking with people who try to educate institutions on how what is blockchain, what is crypto, what is NFT, and it's basically a nightmare because you're talking to people who, you know, are extremely busy, have to take decisions on a lot of people. You know, maybe you go to councils for European councils, and they just have no time, and probably they're very old as well. You know, like you're totally left behind. So yeah, go talk to them about the zero knowledge. It's gonna be quite a challenge. So yeah, I guess our battles are better to be fought with maybe first with companies, like if we can already support like companies, projects that are doing good work and that are respecting our privacy or helping us have more privacy. I guess that's the start. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with that because I mean, Apple has been doing a lot of new stuff with like they seem to have, for some reason, refocused on privacy. They dropped the thing that they were going to scan like all photos for like the pedophile stuff. Because I mean, they knew that was going to be abused, right? And now they just launched like encryption for like basically all your iCloud data. And when I got that download, I turned that on right away.
Yeah, storing passphrases.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is there's account abstraction actually with Apple where you could actually designate someone as like the recovery, social recovery. So, and for this reason, I continue to use Apple. So I think companies need to realize if they, maybe we could get Apple using ZK, right? And then I think it's fundamentally you get, it's a customer first perspective, so you get more money in the end, and people are net more happy.
Sorry for monopolizing speech, but maybe some recommendations, some projects to follow. Check Project Entropy. Bless you. It's self-custody from the states. Basically, you becoming your own bank, but in a nice way. What I like about this project that it has been created from new Cypher team that is highly marginalized. So, for example, leader is transgender persona. They have people in their governance who are from minorities from Africa, who are LGBTQI+, and basically there's the social construct of when you care about the most vulnerable groups, then the better will be solution for everyone else. And especially when they tackle governance, when they attack, like latest one of their posts, personal, was like, if you check governance and the leader of the project allocates more than 10% for himself, trying to justify it with some bullshit, it's not a community-driven project. So what's important within the privacy is to check what kind of team is building the project, why, and what's there behind the surface. And then maybe the project would fail, but you as a person will get more enriched about the idea. Another interesting thing is that check Mina protocol on GitHub. This is the privacy protocol, but they are second most active within the whole industry on GitHub. I don't know what they're doing there, but they develop more resources, commits, pull requests, wherever on GitHub than everyone else. And I'm like, what you're just doing there with the ZK stuff? And it's interesting because basically I think they were ICO-backed project, and for me, there's a certain interesting, funny fact that Status has done ICO, the Mina done ICO, Secret, they made an ICO, and we tend to hate this wave of scammers, kind of like, oh, they took our money and run away. But there are projects in the privacy market that are still there. They were based on ICO money. Now they've fundraised more, and it's kind of interesting that maybe there's certain hope is alive there. Because if Status will deliver their logos and all the technology, maybe it was worth to invest in them 100 million USD in all Ether prices. And other projects to follow is also.
You weren't worried about being security?
What?
Assuming you weren't worried about them being security.
Yeah, there are shady things. If you Google on CoinDesk, one of their co-founders just disappeared. And I'm like, okay, that's a bad sign for transparency. And they stopped releasing transparency reports 1 year ago, but that's the industry. Another project meme, why it's interesting, because they think differently. They add whistleblowers to their team. So the people who are highly exposed, they're anti-governments, but in a nice way. They're saying governments, you should be more transparent. Like Chelsea Manning, she's kind of now is responsible for the hardware side of the mixnet, so they would be faster. And if you go to the other privacy project, they're saying, we don't want to have these public figures. But then the question is like, who would advocate for the industry? Vitalik, who would say that the base layer is neutral and everything else kind of like should be centralized or decentralized. So checking for that perspective, how they empower human rights, not just technology, because technology is not there yet. So kind of just the promise. And within the other more practical things, check the decentralized VPNs. Super simple, non-financial, and they work. And you don't need to kind of like. The problem is like that some VPNs like Orchid, they try to reinvent the business model, and for normal people it's a pain in the ass. You go to the VPN, you need a simple solution, one click, and that's it. And they say, buy our token, go to the exchange, stack your token, and it's a total mess. So one point here that maybe also the future for the privacy of Web3 is a great UX UI in comparison to traditional services. Because if you go to a website of WhatsApp right now, the second most important thing in their menu is privacy. All they're saying that they're protecting your privacy. So the question is like, what's the added value of Web3 privacy compared to them?
This is like food for thought, more than trying to single anything out. How many of you use VPNs every day? Every day. Okay. How many of you spend more than a half an hour a year going through privacy settings on different websites? Half an hour a year. How many of you run a node to prevent RPC from capturing your data?
I use an RPC that doesn't capture.
All the RPCs capture your data. It's just whether they choose to use it or not. That's at least they're recording IP address.
No, it doesn't give my IP.
You hope, right?
That's what she said.
But this is like, there's no proof for it, right? Other than that you hope that they're doing that. Impura used to say that too.
I use block.
Okay, I don't know much about it. You talked to me about that. Like there's, how many of you use Telegram? Right? How many of you use Facebook or Instagram? Right? There's solutions for all of these where you can hide your data, yet we're all doing things that are wrong. Right? So it's sort of a philosophical question and food for thought is the people that worked on the internet in the early days really cared about privacy. They really cared about creating a new socioeconomic system. Right? And the reality is most of us don't make the choices for privacy because its convenience matters, right? Maybe all your friends are on Instagram, maybe Telegram, I use Telegram all the time. And I just hope they're not reading it. I'm not trying to say anything there, but like I don't run a full node for every network I use, right? Like RPCs, we can't even get rid of unless we run a full node. So my hope is that as engineers and as people that are into Web3, that we push and build guardrails around the system of, instead of don't be evil, like Google used to say, to can't be evil, where it's impossible to collect this data, period. That's what we really need to build towards, otherwise we're going into another dystopian future. And it might sound a little dark, and I don't mean to ostracize anyone for making non-privacy centric decisions, because not everyone's paranoid about it, and not everyone should be paranoid by it, but this is sort of the future that we need to work towards.
Thank you. I think that's it. Please give a round of applause to Daniel again. So here come the more fun part, I guess. We have the usual raffle with a few things to win over there. Yeah, you can just relax. I'll just pass around to give you a pen and paper to write your name so you can run with it. And yeah, after that, we'll be going to the restaurant. 2 minutes walk from here.
We're gonna get drunk!
And yeah, if you want to get drunk, you can get drunk. Yeah, if you didn't get enough with New Year's Eve and all the celebrations. Thank you guys.